A new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future, Change the Conversation. An unedited, honest conversation to actually create the future. I'm Arjan Visser, human-centered futurist, and your host today. And join me as I chat with my dear friend Shane Pope about authentic leadership transformation. Shane Pope is an international business director, a facilitator of personal and professional convergence. Shane is on a mission to redefine business as a deep personal endeavor rooted in identity, purpose, and impact. Shane, it's so good to have you back after a couple of weeks ago when you joined in running our first Authentic Leadership Transformation Summit.
Yes.
The Alt Summit, and we launched the Alt Forum.
Yes.
So how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks, Ian. I'm doing well. Still processing so much of what was discussed, during that week. There was a lot of wisdom in those few days. Absolutely.
So what stood out for you?
I like to do things in order. I'm one of those kind of logical. So I'm like, hey, let's start from the beginning. So just thinking about the first day, and right at the beginning, you set it off with leadership begins within. That self-awareness fuels your external impact. I resonate with that so much because I think that really is a change in the conversation, like you were saying at the top of the episode, changing the conversation. So I think a lot of the leadership resources out there and the leadership conversation out there is, what skills can I learn, or what techniques can I implement? What leadership style should I adopt to be most effective, or to get the most results? But what you're saying is, no, hang on a second, that's all external stuff. Leadership has to begin within each one of us. And I love that, because that instantly makes it personal, right? What's within you is different from what's within me. And so our leadership is going to be different.
Yeah. I'm just listening to you, I think, and that makes it so unpredictable. So some
Yes.
people will freak out by just the thought of it. How do I measure it? Yeah, well, maybe that is a leftover from what we talked about on the third day, when we said we are entering a new window in time, a new 50-year cycle, and not everything is just measured with a KPI, and it would make life so much more personal, human, relational when we are authentic, instead of living up to thresholds,
Yes.
having the right score.
Yes, and you're exactly right. It changes the conversation. It flips the status quo on its head. It's this sort of swimming upstream thing that you talk about, and I think it's going to take quite a radical shift in people's perceptions of what leadership is, and even what success looks like, to be able to embrace this idea.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know why, but it just brings back memories. The days when I was in business architecture, and we had to model processes, and we had this pieces of paper. Of course, they were digital, but and we were mapping the processes in swimming lanes to roles and actors, and it's such a opposite as swimming upstream, which is adventurous, which is tiring, but also you want to find out where the water comes from,
Right.
instead of knowing the percentage of metals in a swimming pool that is exactly like specific sizes. Yeah.
And just to clarify, not that all of that's going to get put aside in this era, right? But it's a different category. And
It is.
we're talking about management versus leadership here. Is that, are you seeing it the same way?
Well, yes. Well, you could say, it's not one dimensional and it's not two dimensional, and probably it is more than three dimensional. And so, and to simplify things, because they are really complicated and complex, we use all kinds of models. And currently I'm working with a client to get strategy to step up, and the people, and we look at the dimensions. Now it's people, opposite of organization, not opposing. No, it's people opposite of organization, and it's the present opposite of the future. And if you make those like two axes, then one of the corners is process, is structure. Structure that liberates and makes possible instead of creates a prison. But it is structure.
Right.
Because structure, system, processes are there to keep the momentum. So it doesn't work without them. And at the same way, it doesn't work when they are too dominant. And everything that we create in the new, we bring into order, structure it, and that releases it releases new space for new creativity.
Right.
And at the same time, one of the other things I hear a lot is that organizations tend to say, well, we are family. We collaborate, we co-partner. Absolutely. But it's one of in this case, one of the corners. You cannot do it without. It cannot be dominant. And competition. There is a market out there. There is a marketplace. You can actually, competition proves your character. It's really character building. Like, how do you react? How do you position yourself amidst competition that is fair, stronger, unfair, unhealthy? That is where things get tested. That's where the inside get tested from the outside. And so and these are just like, you can create more dimensions.
Right.
So it is part of us, and we as human, we bring things in order and structure it so that we can manage it. But the purpose for it is that we put it into systems, automated technology, so that people with their creative minds, multi-dimensional, time-wise multi-dimensional perspectives, are released to enter the creative space once more, to find the new solution and bring that. And we always joke, healthy leaders send people into chaos, but do not let them disappear, and help them to put what they find back into order. The new is born out of the chaos. So if you're too long in order, it gets really boring and you lose your edge. If you're too long in chaos, maybe well, isn't it like getting into space?
Yeah.
Don't go too far.
Don't go too far.
Stay connected to the mothership.
Right. Yes. I see these almost as pegs, or almost boundary markers, or almost providing a context, a frame within which this creative process can occur. You're talking about perhaps some healthy boundaries, and understanding what are all the different aspects that are going on around me. be aware of those things, but not be dominated by them or ruled by them, but have that in mind as providing a context within which I can then step into that creative space. How, as a leader who's looking to pioneer something new, how do I make sure that I can keep myself free almost, or have that the mental space, the mental and emotional space to create an environment like that?
Yeah. Well, if you lean on frameworks, we talked about that in the first alt forum. A painting is painted, and then there is a frame put around it
Mm-hmm.
that makes the painting more beautiful. It gives some kind of a drawn in,
Mm.
but it also protects the painting. So that's the role of the frame.
Mm.
If you're going to change the painting, you first take the frame off, and then probably you find out that the canvas size is not really fit for purpose anymore.
Mm.
It's became bigger or smaller.
Mm.
That's the habit of everything. It gets more important, or it gets less important. And when it gets less important, it's because it has lived up to its purpose and brought you further, and now you're entering the next step.
Mm.
So the likelihood that the painting fits the canvas again, and the framework makes it more beautiful and fits, is very unlikely.
Mm.
So frameworks have a purpose. They are like the scaffolding, but don't make the next project fit the tool.
Right. So almost seeing them as a tool for a season, but
Yeah.
then being willing to take that off, or put it aside, or rework it for the next thing.
Yeah, and we have very valuable frameworks. Like we use in a lot of drawings, we use pyramids.
Mm.
And pyramids have a very vivid image about that something is foundational, and it all layer by layer builds up to the top. So nothing in the foundation can be skipped if you want to get the top and you
Mm.
want the whole pyramid. Um, but they change over time as well. So it helps as just a metaphor or just like an imagery to help the conversation.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, they're just tools.
Mm.
They are, and the power of a tool or a metaphor is in that it simplifies the complexity to such a level that you can make steps. But it just invites you to get in. And at the end, the tool is no longer sufficient, but you grew up and you can handle the complexity.
Mm. It feels like we can sometimes put these tools or these frameworks like in front of us or almost over us as something to build towards, or lead towards. But what you're saying is, no, actually our leadership should be out in front, and the tools almost get built as we go, or reflect a season that has been completed or was, but now we're moving on to the next thing. We're pioneering something new.
That's a Yeah, I think so. Because as a pioneer, there are no maps.
Mm.
You create paths,
Mm.
and sometimes you build bridges to help people to shortcut the journey you have made, because that was your assignment and they have a different assignment.
Mm.
So it's a bit like you did the whole journey and then you fly in the people, in that perspective. But the pioneering figures out where paths can be drawn,
Mm.
created, and then maps follow. But there are no maps for pioneers.
No.
There is no promised destination, like a promised resort of where we are going.
Mm, mm.
It's the Wild West.
So that begs the question: what is out there for pioneers? If there's no maps to follow, what do pioneers? Where do they look to for resource, for help, for guidance, for support, for inspiration?
Well, they have an intrinsic motivation
Mm,
that is stronger than all external factors, distractions, opinions. They can discard them all as, well, that's unbelief, but I believe.
mm,
So there is an internal drive of not being satisfied with the status quo and having a deep belief, deep trust that there is more, which will be better. And they don't need to understand till they get there. I think that's a really interesting side of a pioneer. They
mm,
don't need to understand.
mm,
So they prepare on what they sense that could be valuable, and they adjust along the way their methods, their strategy.
mm,
But they have a very strong drive about that they sense something they have never seen before.
mm,
And that gives them a drive, an appetite, and other people don't have that. Other people love to work out the details
mm.
after the builders have left the building site.
Yeah.
And that is all really good, because that makes everything so beautiful.
Mm,
The diversity of literally insights, sides of people with different virtues, different characters, different
mm,
desires.
mm,
I think that is the essence of true diversity,
mm,
um, which can only arise when the internal knowing who you are is stronger than external expectation. Like,
mm,
if you know really sure who you are becoming and where you should go, and you share that with me, and I feel anything else than does it resonates with me or
mm,
not, then I'm actually not mature enough to deal with your maturity. Because I should celebrate, support, encourage you in where you sense that you are going, and your viewpoint of the future and reality. And we all have our own. But if I feel competition or threat or lack or fear of missing out by hearing your viewpoint, then I can only do two things: try to fit in, which will make me lose myself. Or so it's for you the right thing and it's for me not a good thing.
mm,
Or I fight it and everyone loses.
mm,
So I have to understand who I am before I can listen to people who have a certain drive, position, insight of where they are going. Because I don't need to understand them. I don't need to convince them otherwise.
mm,
What I need to do is hear their heart and understand which part of me helps them to keep the momentum.
mm. I love that, because again we're circling back round to, it's all about what's going on within, and it's all a very personal experience, a very personal process. What you're talking about, these conversations amongst pioneers, I'm not hearing any language around the how and the methods and the tactics and techniques. It's all about, okay, how does that resonate within me? What inside of me is resonating with that? And that's telling me, that's what I'm hearing is telling me about you. It's also telling me about me, because what you're saying has an impact on me, and how do I respond to that tells me a lot about me. And that dives straight back into that self-awareness piece that we were talking about earlier. That self-awareness, that internal process, that personal leadership, you know, is what fuels the external impact that pioneers are striving to have in this world.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and even your awareness of your impact, you need to understand for who people that counts and for who it doesn't count, because else you enforce it, and that's not impact. Then you have put them into a corner to step away from who they are and please you. And we do that all the time. Our whole way of rewarding, celebrating people. Like we have spoke many times about what makes business personal, and being celebrated sounds so much more better than being tolerated. But it isn't much better. Because if you don't know who you are, it will push you in your burnout zone. You get a dopamine rush from being celebrated, and you get addicted to it, and you want more. So you do what you love to do too much.
Yeah.
You ignore actually that your self-awareness. And I have seen it, in business a lot of time, and I had crazy incentives, and one time that immediately comes back, like 8 days sailing a regatta in the Caribbean, that was number one dream, those kind of things. But I wasn't in the race, but I was one of the 10 people who won that trip. So I wasn't aware of the competition. I was aware that it happened every year, but I wasn't aware of the rest, which was great. But I was thinking, like, what if I would have strived whole year long to get in one of the categories the number one position, so I would guarantee the outcome that I would be on that trip. And then next year the Caribbean would not be enough. It would be Antarctica. And the year after it probably would be a space trip, and then the moon, and then Mars, But that whole journey would not serve me. It will cost me dearly.
Because what you're describing is chasing something external rather than leading from something internal.
Yeah.
So as leaders working with people, leading others, I mean, how do we work with our people and to help them also step into this space of leading from within, and not succumb to driving with external incentives like you've described, and risking leading people off track?
Well, it's that old saying, the carrot and the stick. It's neither of both of them. You know, it's not with carrots and it's not with sticks.
Mm.
You get your outcome, but at the expense of people
Mm.
in both ways. So I think as a leader, you have to model it yourself.
Mm.
We talked in the summit about who am I becoming? What is my future perspective? What is the language I can explain it to myself and others?
Mm.
What are the people I'm making a difference to when I do the one thing I'm called to do? That's self-leadership. Then leadership is actually, I think, helping others to do the same journey,
Mm.
making space for them,
Mm.
they find out who they are becoming, what they deeply desire, not what they want or not want, but what they truly desire,
Mm.
and equip them, support them, create space for them, help them to find a better space if it doesn't fit in your mission as a leader.
Mm.
You know, you don't have to change your mission to accommodate other people, but people that have a different mission, help them to figure out.
Mm.
It makes, but that's the healthy competition part.
Right.
You know, if we start to compete with people because we think, well, if that's really, that person is amazing, I don't want that person to step away from our team.
Mm.
Does it serve the person?
Mm.
Everyone is born with an amount of heartbeats, and we have to use those heartbeats wisely.
Yeah.
Because if we run out of time because we have given them away to another purpose than the one we were born for,
Mm.
then we get that high number. I think Chris mentioned it, and it's somewhere in the high 70%. So maybe it's the 80-20 rule again, of people who, before they step out of this, how do you say, transition to the other side of eternity, that's the language, isn't it? They say, well, I didn't do what I came to do. I
Mm.
didn't fulfill my mission, my purpose.
Mm.
Then my imagination goes, well, if we say we cross over to the other side of eternity, what if this side of eternity was preparation for that side?
Mm.
Then we didn't finish the preparation.
Right.
So it's not at that point, well, missed opportunity. It is, well, you can do the math, you've been a math professor. And if you do something, 80% of 80% of 80% of 80%, it gets a total different curve than one time 100% of 100%. Now,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that compounding effect, isn't it? That the earlier you start, the end result can be phenomenally different depending on. At the beginning, it just seems like something slightly different, or if you're a pilot flying on a bearing, you can be out by just a small amount at the beginning, but by the end of that journey, you're a long way off target. And I think that's perhaps the risk that we face with this leadership, with this adventure called life, and especially looking at leadership is how do we keep reorienting to that internal compass, perhaps? Yeah, because I think, like you say, almost every conversation we have with people will have an impact on us and can influence us in some way. And how do we take that information on board wisely? But then in the midst of all of that, and in the midst of all of the noise out there, remain kind of focused, remain true to our one thing, that, as you're saying, our direction. I think it's a challenge.
It is a challenge, and they're just thinking of we in project management. One of the simple tools is the Moscow tool, and we start to do first what we must do, what we should do, what we could do, and we never start doing what we would do. I think when we make business personal, and of course there are things we must do and could do.
Sure.
Like we must brush our teeth, and there are those basic foundational things. With everything, when there is option, you choose the one thing, but the rest probably needs to be on a high enough level of hygiene to sustain the one thing. But from a personal perspective, what if we surround ourselves with people who keep suggesting what we could do, so that we have options to choose what we want to do? And we get so also this conversation, it is not what you must do or should do. No, it's finding out the people that can support you in what you want to do. And with want, I mean that deep down desire, your internal drive. Surround yourself with people who understand that and start to trigger you and use the word provoke you by what you could do. So, and all with the goal to go away from that base level bottom line life and get to top line life, where you really enjoy and get satisfaction and reward of being a blessing for the people who it matters to. Like in a conversation with that client around strategy was also, what does the client want? Then the answer is, well, profit, income, money. Yes, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And without that, nothing continues. But that's not the answer. Because you need your client to fulfill your mission to stay with you. And if someone else just say, well, I buy you out, tell me your price, and money would be the reason. What if the top line is happiness? Then what are all the things in between that you could be serving your client to get there? His vision, his growth, his smile. Just to say a few things that, again, we cannot measure them with process and all those things. But what if the client has a smile and has a vision for the next generation for his business and can imagine how his mission is accelerated by working with you? Now we start to talk about a relationship with mutual benefits.
Yeah.
That's when we stay together. And then someone with unlimited financial resources can throw anything on the table, but that amount of money ends the vision, the smile, and all the other things, and ends the relationship with you. That makes business personal, I think.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and it's that all those multiple dimensions, isn't it? Because I mean, as people, we have multiple dimensions. We're not robots. We're not cogs in a wheel. And when we're forced to be cogs in a wheel, even only a fraction of us is able to be expressed, which means less value produced, but also frustration inside as well, I think. And so what you're talking about is with stepping into this new age, this creative age, as you were talking about during the summit, I think is an opportunity to unlock so much of this that we're talking about.
Yeah. I love this cliffhanger. So we for the podcast we leave it with this cliffhanger. And I just invite actually everyone that has been listening to this podcast live or just through one of the podcast platforms. If you are interested in what the panel discussions of the summit contained, um, the replays are still available. So just go to summit.businessrevivalists.com and sign up, and you get access to the platform with all the replays. If something triggered in our conversation, then like the invitation that I give on a weekly basis, never ignore a trigger. Don't let yourself be distracted by any business, but value this trigger and reach out. You can connect with Shane, you can connect with me. Just use the direct messaging opportunities in the platforms, or use the link businessrevivalist.com/connect in the notes of the podcast. And if you're really serious, then I ask you to consider to join the Alt Forum and become part of changing the conversation, shaping the conversation, and creating the future together. It is for forerunners, game changers, pioneers, forward-thinking leaders who know that there needs to be something in their life to keep momentum in leading from the inside out, and personal growth and self-leadership. So if you need momentum, if you need other, I would call them fellow travelers, fellow pioneers, just use the link that you have been seeing on the bottom and will be in the outro video, which is alt.businessrevivalist.com, and just treat yourself and join the Alt Forum. Shane, thank you for today.
My pleasure. It's always fun chatting with you.
It's always fun, and we're already like way out of our time, but that's what happens. Looking forward to another podcast conversation, but maybe even more to our conversations in between.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you very much, and have
Pleasure.
a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.